It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebest. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe you're listening to us on the radio. Maybe you found us online. Regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you would just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40, maybe 50 plus years and then shutting it off and retiring on Retirement Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on retirement personality types. You know, there's no one-size-fits-all equation for a great life and retirement. Everyone has been created differently and owns a unique set of life experiences. Today, we take a deep dive look at the Otter. Otters enjoy being around people, large groups, and are full of energy. In this podcast, Ben explains how Otters need to have a delicate balance of planning each day in retirement while not overcommitting or infringing on an Otter's freedom. Enjoy this episode. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are continuing this series on retirement personalities, and today we are going to cover the Otter, and we have a wonderful show on tap for you today. So if you've enjoyed this conversation that we've been having over the past couple of weeks, you are in for a treat today. Just a quick reminder, we got a Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. This is a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. If you want to live repurposed, you got to get inside this Facebook group, because this is where it's at. You go to facebook.com, search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Again, click join to make your retirement everything it was supposed to be. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here today, Ben, and we started this mini-series a couple of weeks ago, and we really wanted to take a deep dive on retirement personalities. And I have to be the first to admit, I've been always looking for that silver bullet answer. This is how you do retirement. This is how it's done. This is how you have to think about it. And after doing this podcast and having repurposed for many years, it's just not a one-size-fits-all answer.
No, there isn't a one-size-fits-all. And like we know from dealing with so many different people in the retirement business that people look at retirement, they look at life very differently, right? God created us all in His image, and He created us all with uniqueness, and that's what makes it fun. That's what makes life fun. And I think the more we can just both accept and try to understand the people around us, I think that is huge. So as we go through these shows, whether or not you are like, yep, I can resonate, I'm a lion, like last week, or you don't resonate with that, you're like, well, that doesn't sound like me.
Right.
There's somebody in your life that is that personality type, and listening to these shows helps you understand who they are and really how you can best, really do life with them.
Now, it's how to do life with them, but understanding who you are. We're all wired a little bit differently. I think that's an interesting point. We're all made in God's image, but yet we're wired differently. Our DNA is different. Our personalities are different. I think of my three kids, their personality was literally the same as it was in the womb. It's set literally at conception, and that, it's time to embrace that. Don't compare ourselves to, he or she is like this. Say, this is who I am. Let's embrace it, and let's embrace the things that God has given us.
Yeah, every step of life. If you're, a kid, or you're growing into adulthood, or you're, retiring, doesn't matter, right? You are created for a specific purpose in that time, and what you're doing is throughout life learning more about who God made you to be. There's people listening to this show, I'm guessing, that are like, I've never even heard of these personality types. I've never heard of an Enneagram. I've never heard of, the stuff these guys are talking about. It's never too late. to learn more about yourself and try to understand, why God made you the way you are. And by the way, when you get there, when you start to understand, oh, this is why I think this way about life, you can really walk into your fullness, right? You can walk into that full spot in retirement where you're like, man, I just feel content. I feel complete. I feel like, hey, that doesn't mean work is done. That doesn't mean my life is done, but it allows you to know, hey, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we call this whole platform Repurpose. Yeah, we want you to have purpose in retirement, but really it's about walking into the fullness at which God created you. So again, that's why we are doing shows like this. We decided to base our research on the 4 animal personality tests. So we introduced that show a couple of weeks ago. You have the lion, the otter, the beaver, and the golden retriever. If you're listening to this online, hit pause. Go to the Facebook page, search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. If you go there, I've got links for you to take that test because you're going to want to know what personality type you are as we go through these shows. It just takes a couple of minutes. There's a couple of ways to do it, and it's totally free. But you're either going to be a lion, an otter, beaver, or a golden retriever. Ben, we talked about the lion. We spent half an hour just talking about the lion. Let's give people a little recap of that show.
Yeah, last week was a super fun show, but also a show that I was like convicted on over and over as I'm talking to myself and thinking through, someday I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be walking away from this business, and how will I feel? And being a lion myself, and when you think about that, our mindset, it's like we feel like our work is never done. We feel as if there's a project out there for me to conquer. There's something I need to do. And when I look at projects, I many times struggle with putting the project before the person, right? That tends to be one of my shortcomings. Lions, when we look at retirement, can see major struggles when we feel this constant need to be busy. Like there's something else I need to conquer. And I don't mind being busy in retirement. I think that's, in fact, a very important, good thing in retirement, stay busy. But when it's the focus of my life, when it's all I'm doing, I think that's when I can see some problems. And then also when I walk away from something that has been part of my life for 30, 40 plus years, replacing that and feeling like some loss there too.
I could certainly see how a lion could struggle in retirement. If you do retirement the way that society tells you to do it, that would be almost crushing to a lion if we don't understand this piece of ourselves. You mentioned at the end of last week's show too that identity piece is big, because usually a lion has found some identity in conquering the project, and now I retire, and now it's almost like I lost a piece of myself. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, for a lion walking away from a career and something they've done for 30, 40 years, if we've seen ourselves as, really part of us was that work, a big part of us, and we started to create our image more on our work than where it should be, I think that's when we can really struggle as a lion.
We ended last week's show. If you are a lion, shoot me an email, jared@retirerepurpose.com. And again, the way you spell my first name is JERRID @retirerepurpose.com. If you're a lion, put lion in the subject line, and I will send you all of the results of our research, because we just covered about half of it in last week's show. So if you want to start somewhere, go back and listen to last week's show. But if you want the full research and you're a lion and you want to know everything we found out, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I'll gladly email that over to you absolutely free. All right, so let's start today's show, Ben. We're going to talk about the otter. Now, just full disclosure, you've taken the personality test. You're a lion. I've taken it. I'm an otter. So this is going to be maybe a little bit more personal anecdote for myself. But let's talk about the otter. Who are they? What's their mindset?
Well, this is going to be super fun, Jared.
No, it's not.
I got to pick on you all day.
Last week was fun for me. Now it's my turn.
So that otter's probably, if you're an Enneagram person, you're probably like a 3 or 7, right? You're the reformer perfectionist or the enthusiast adventure type. You're somebody who, in my mind, you think of an otter out in the wild, they're playful. They're moving around. They're certainly somebody who's very enthusiastic, right? They're always moving, jumping around, hard to stay on task. I'm looking at you like...
I'm not looking at you in the eye.
You won't even look me in the eyes. I'm like, this is explaining you. But I mean, that's what's really fun about this, Jared, is I look at the mindset or how an otter thinks, their natural strengths of being an enthusiastic type person, usually a good communicator, emotional, passionate, very outgoing. Again, I like to think about an otter out in the wild, moving around from place to place, being very fun-loving as well. I think some of the weaknesses that an otter might find is at times being unrealistic, not paying a ton of attention to some details, jumping around, being a little impulsive, reactive, and you're starting to laugh, Jared.
I'm not looking at you in the eye when I'm going through this list.
But I mean, I think that's maybe can be too talkative, very excitable. But again, you think about an otter in a while. I think that's what I would think of when I look at that personality profile.
It was interesting because before I started working with you, my background, for those of you who have listened to this show, know this about me. I was in TV. I was a TV weatherman. And I always say, in a lot of ways that was not a good fit for me, but in a lot of ways it really was. My job was to go in front of people and talk about weather for 3 minutes. And many times there wasn't a lot to talk about. And I think that was where my strengths were. I think I could connect with people really well. But yes, emotional. Otters are typically emotionally driven. I've known that about myself long before I took this test. Also, too, what's interesting is that I'm married. I'm not sure who my wife is, but my wife is definitely not an otter. If otters marry other otters, that's not good.
That's a problem.
And I've always said this, and Ben, you know this because we're friends. Like, my wife is like steady Eddie. Like, otters need some steadiness in my life. And also, too, I think that's why you and I work well together, because you're not an otter. And if you have two people trying to lead a company or platform that are otters, maybe you need to get a line in there or somebody with some organization. Otherwise, you're just driven by emotion. And I think, and again, I've said this about myself too. Like, I think I'm wired hot. I'm wired as a go-getter, but we need to be kind of reined in and can almost be a little bit too impulsive because we're driven by emotion.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of an otter,
right?
I mean, the what comes from some of those strengths, when you offset that with, a person that can add the detail, can add the follow-through, can add like hey, let's bring it back a little bit here.
Right.
When you take the creativeness and that fast-paced kind of life and really the communication with others, that's what makes I think an otter so great, especially with what we're doing.
So maybe if you're listening to this, perhaps you're connecting with this, and just a little prerequisite here: as you listen to these shows, you're probably going to see a little bit of yourself in all four. But you'll definitely lean a direction. Again, just another shout out. Go to the Facebook group and take the test so you know who you are. But as we go through this list, the test has definitely pegged me pretty well as an otter. So let's talk about how this person reacts to retirement. How does an otter retire?
Yeah, what I love about otters and retirement is it's another new adventure, right? An otter, they're going to see this new thing and look ahead optimistically as retirement, as this is my next new big adventure.
I think that makes a lot of sense because, again, otters tend to be maybe a little bit more personable, personality driven, emotional, a little bit more reactive. So I could see how this change would be something to be looked upon. In fact, honestly, like I'm one of the few guys when there is a change, I do get a little bit excited because it's kind of something new. Some people really, really kind of hamper change or hold back or resistant to it, and I don't struggle with that too much.
No, otters love change. They love moving from one thing to the next, right? And they love freedom. So I think about an otter coming into retirement, this newfound freedom to go out and do so many things and be able to move around. They're looking at new ways they can meet new people. They can get out and really, I think, feel as if it's the next big thing.
Yeah, and again, looking at that, more of the weaknesses of the otter, if it's not done correctly, that's where this next new adventure could really be a huge letdown. So I'm already kind of picturing myself in 20 or 30 years whenever I decide to quote unquote retire. You got to have a positive aspect on this. There's got to be an optimistic look on this, because if not, our personality type does not play well in that environment.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads to, when I see an otter retiring, where do I think they need guidance? What do I think they may need help with? And I think one of the biggest things is planning, right? I mean, mean, if you're an otter and you're jumping around and work has given you kind of this framework in which to create, structure around your life. When that's gone, I think many times an otter needs some part of daily planning. And I love that when we work with somebody that needs a daily plan and we can really engineer key things into each day that they used to have while working. That's very, very important for an otter.
Well, and again, I'm just going back to how I feel in my daily work. I have to have that plan, because if not, I'm just kind of driven by the winds of emotion, and you know this about me. I mean, I like it when somebody's kind of almost telling me what to do. Not that I can't lead or don't lead or shouldn't lead. It's just I like it when I've got a little bit of structure telling me what to do, because again, I'm just talking out loud here. I'm driven by how I feel that day. Well, that doesn't always work because your emotions, and this is just true for everybody, your emotions are a poor guide through life. And I've noticed this too. The older I get, my wife is helping me teach this, is just being more steady Eddie in how I think and being able to look through the daily noise sometime of emotion. And so again, if you took my daily structure away, and I'm one of those guys too, like in today's world, a lot of people can work from home and they have tremendous freedom. That doesn't work for guys like me, because I enjoy the freedom of it, but need to have something implemented to kind of keep me on task throughout the day, because we can get, as you mentioned, pretty distracted throughout the day.
Yeah, but both distracted, but also just kind of get caught in many different directions. Mm-hmm. And I think if I think of an otter, the other thing that you're probably going to miss if you're working from home is people interaction.
Right.
So a key component of motivating an otter, remember, is some kind of the attaboy, it's good job, way to go. Mm-hmm. Seeing people around you at times, because the energy goes down the less you're with people.
Yep.
So another place that I think of a retiring otter needing help is, don't forget to get plugged in.
Yeah.
Isolation, we know, for any person mm-hmm. today, and that's true of lions, otters, golden retrievers, beavers, doesn't matter. You need people around you.
Yeah.
We're created to be a people of community, and I think an otter, more than any of the other types, needs to remember that, okay, I'm walking away from potentially a family of people that loves me, that I'm used to at work, mm-hmm. and now it's kind of just me, right? And maybe I need to remember, I need to go find that new support system, mm-hmm. find my new group. And I'm an otter, so I love doing that, right? If I'm an otter, I'm going to say, oh, this is great.
Right.
But you got to remember how important that was to you, and then replace it so you don't feel isolated.
I can think of 3 examples. Number one is this job. I mean, you know this, Ben. I could probably do 90% of this job from home. I choose not to, because I would be all over the place, and I do enjoy being around coworkers. Number one. Number 2 is the gym. I think of how much money I've spent on gym memberships in the last 25 years. I could have bought 3 gyms by now. But so people, you could argue, like, why don't you just put a home gym in? Because half the reason I go to the gym is because there's people there. And then number 3, you know me, I love to go and speak. I'm one of the few people, I like to get in front of people and speak. That energizes me. And during coronavirus, it was hard because we weren't together. And, if you had to speak at a conference, we were doing virtually. That sucks the life out of Otters, And I've always said, people say, that we want you to come speak to our group. Can you do it online or in person? I'm going to choose in person every single time. So that's what brings me energy. And that's not going to change once I retire. There still has got to be that people element to this equation.
Yeah, 100%. So again, understanding your personality type. If you're an otter, these are things that you have to make sure that you engineer into your life. Mm-hmm. Another thing, Jared, I think about is intentional choices. When you retire, there will be hundreds of different things that you can do. Literally different places you can start to volunteer. You get pulled all different directions, but don't get overcommitted. An otter can easily say yes, 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 I'll do it,
right.
and then not do anything extremely well. So remembering to really keep a rhythm to saying yes, yes, and no. We have to be able to say no in retirement. That goes for all the animal types. But I think an otter, more than he doesn't like to say no, because it looks good, right? It looks like something, I could do that. It kind of sounds fun.
Yeah.
But being able to say no because you have a specific thing that you don't want to get torn away from, that it can be still a focus.
Yeah. Well, we love having stuff on our schedule. When I look at my schedule and I've got an event coming up in a month and I got to get prepared for this in a week, that's exciting to me. When my schedule is quiet, I go a little bit dormant. So I like that, but I can also see how you can get a little bit overpowered, because we Otters love our freedom too. And so when we get, locked in to where I've got now, you've kind of hit the point of diminishing returns now all of a sudden, where now it's restricting my freedom. So there's a delicate balance, but I think that this goes back to the conversation of knowing yourself. And so if you're an Otter, you got to really know where that balance is between having a plan, having things on your schedule, engineering in the social, engineering where that you are kind of in alignment with what jazzes you, but not going overboard on that one either. That's a good point. And I think this is especially true, especially in that first year, because it's a new thing. We're super excited and we can almost go overboard. So there's something special about that first onset of retirement for an Otter.
Yeah, that first year of retirement can be a really hard adjustment for an Otter because, again, without a plan or really, that normal guardrails that we've had in work, when we remove that organization, what gave us organization, we're going to struggle. That our personality type will say, okay, where do I go? What do I do? What do I do? And again, that first year, creating the structure and boundaries again, setting themselves up, will be highly important for the Otter.
I think also too, you have to change your mindset. I think with anything new for me, if I'm not hitting home runs like in the first 48 hours or a week, it's like, oh shoot, and then we tend to be a little bit more all or nothing. I'm either all in or I'm all out, because again, we're emotionally driven and our emotions kind of go up and down. So I could see very quickly, like a month into retirement or a week in, trying to maintain this level of like intensity because this is new and I'm going after it. So I think Otters really need to focus on how they think about this season. It's not just a firecracker that's going to boom, go off and it's done.
No, a huge thing to remember. Retirement is a marathon. Many people retiring today, Jared, might retire at early 60s. Mm-hmm. We're living longer.
Right.
You may have 20 years of this. Now, those first few years, I love seeing retirees go out with a bang. They're just like going all over.
Right.
An Otter needs to pace themselves to some extent to remember,
point.
hey, and you might have to realize, it was a letdown. We see retirees all the time. It's like, I didn't expect it to go this way. That's totally natural. And Otter's going to feel that. But again, making sure you're like, okay, I'm okay here. I can just find another avenue to get my energy out there and make sure I'm still with people. Mm-hmm. I'm still, making a difference for others. That's huge. Mm-hmm. And staying somewhat organized with a plan.
What's interesting about myself, and again, I'm just throwing a little personal anecdotes in here. A lot of people have said, I used to play basketball in college. Basketball was a great sport for me because you're just sprinting. I'm sprinting 60 feet. I stop. I sprint 60 feet. And then people say, you should get into running 5Ks and, half marathons. And I got to say, the long distance thing, even in the physical realm of running long distances, I have zero interest in that. I would rather go run hills in my backyard than go run a 10K or a half marathon. And running a marathon, no disrespect to people who are marathon, I will never do that because my mindset isn't in it for the long haul. I'm quick and I'm snappy, and so it's interesting that you brought that up when it comes to retirement. We got about a minute left here. What is kind of a final thought? What's one thing or maybe a tangible thing? We've given people a lot of things to think about today, but how do we wrap this up here with this show, Ben?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to where we started this show, right? We're created in God's image, and really digging in deep to that and remembering, I think one of the things that an Otter can struggle with is this fear of missing out or FOMO. They can see things going on back at the office. They can see things that people are doing in the workplace, or maybe they're on Facebook and they're just seeing their friends do things. But being rooted in who they are in Christ first and really embracing who God created you to be. You're an Otter. You like being full of energy. Use that energy to make a difference in the people around you and be excited at this new chapter of life.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation on the Otter personality type as much as I did. Again, if you want to find out which animal you are, you can take a free test by going to our Facebook page, Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Just go to facebook.com, search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. You're going to find links there where you can take the test. It just takes a couple of minutes. And if you want all the research that we gathered on the Otter and retirement, I want to send it to you for absolutely free. The way that you do that, just shoot me an email at jared@retirerepurpose.com and put Otter in the subject line, and I'll email that to you right to your inbox, totally free. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.